Welcome back today, guys. I have something special. As you probably know, Veterans Day is upon us. I want to take a few minutes to recognize someone special. I was introduced to this man about a year ago, and the stories he told me made my jaw drop. His name in War Thunder is Bald Eagle 01, but his real name is Colonel Carl Parlator, and he's a former F-4 Phantom pilot who did 3 tours in Vietnam and who also flew F-16s later in his career. During one of his tours out of Cam Ranh in Vietnam, he earned his Purple Heart for being shot down during combat in the F-4 Phantom. That is one of a few amazing stories that he will actually share with you today. So I sat down with Colonel Parlator this afternoon over video chat, and I tell you what, everything that could have gone wrong did. Unfortunately, the video is corrupt. You'll get about the first 5 seconds of it, but the audio is still good, so here's our interview today. I hope you enjoy it. It's some really amazing stories. All right, welcome to the show, guys. Thanks for stopping by again. We're here joined today by Colonel Carl Parlator, retired U.S. Air Force Colonel Carl Parlator, and he is actually an F-4 Phantom pilot in Vietnam. Welcome to the show, Carl.
Brian, it's a pleasure for having me. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Tell me, how old were you when you joined the Air Force?
Well, I went through ROTC at school, and so I had to sign up when I was 17 years old to get into the program.
Mm-hmm.
So I was in ROT 17, but when I joined the Air Force, I was like 21.
Okay, that's cool. And so you did a couple tours in Vietnam, right?
I did 3 tours, 68, 70, and 72.
And one of those was in Cam Ranh, right? Where were the others?
First was at Cam Ranh, the second one was at Phuket, and the third was at Udon Thani, which was in Thailand.
So I know a lot of people nowadays, they don't, this war is many decades ago. How was it in Vietnam? Why were we over there?
The country, well, first of all, I volunteered. And the reason I volunteered is because I've always wanted to fly fighters, and you don't get drafted into flying fighters.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to fly fighters in the worst way. I don't know why, but ever since I can remember, I wanted to fly fighters, and I was fortunate enough and blessed to get into it. So I was really a kind of a volunteer. And because I was a volunteer, everybody around me were volunteers.
Mm-hmm.
So the guys that I was rubbing shoulders with were all volunteers to be there. Now, the guys on the ground, we used to call them grunts, and that's not a derogatory term. That's an endearing term. Those guys, a lot of them were drafted, and they probably didn't want to be there. Now, we were given these very expensive airplanes to fly, and they paid us good money to fly them. So did we want to get shot at? Not really, but that's what our job was, so that's why we went.
Okay. So, all right. So I know a lot of people are going to be asking this question. So you are an experienced Phantom pilot. How many hours do you have?
I logged over 2,800 hours in the Phantom.
2,800 hours.
D.
Oh, wow. All of them. Okay. And so now you are obviously, you play War Thunder. You enjoy the game just as much as the rest of us. Now, tell me.
Absolutely.
Tell me, what is the Phantom like in War Thunder compared to actually flying it?
I think Gaijin did a very good job of getting the numbers right.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that is that, the airplane could go so fast, it could turn so hard. So that part of it is pretty close. Now, there are a couple of things that weren't modeled properly, but those are noise level things compared to the overall picture. I thoroughly enjoy flying the F4 in War Thunder.
That's awesome.
I'm living vicariously through War Thunder through my youth.
That's awesome. That's good to know because even the developers they obviously don't have the experience that you do. So it's really good to hear that, to be honest. So I understand you've been in a couple dogfights. I know one of them we're going to talk about a little bit later, and that's how you earned your Purple Heart. And so one of our mutual friends, his name's Swarz, we talked the other day, and he told me about a MiG-21 fight that I had actually never heard of. So tell me a little bit about that one.
Well, the way the war went, you had a sortie the first in the morning and then a sortie in the afternoon. So you had these massive amounts of airplanes going up north. And during one of those massive flights up there, one guy got shot down on a place called Thud Ridge, which is a spine, a mountain range that points right at Hanoi. And we were sent up after the second mission to see if we could get this guy and rescue him. I was in a four ship. I was number four, and then we had a fast mover FAC forward air controller in an F4, and he was going to go around real low trying to pick this guy up and see if he could get him. Well, the guy was flying the airplane. I'll never forget his name. His name was Mike Nelson, Norton Nelson. He comes down over Thud Ridge and starts pulling this guy. We found out later that he'd already been scarfed up. But we heard on Red Crown, which Red Crown was the AWACS of the day back then. It was a C-121 with a big radar dome on the top of it. And he called out that there's two blue bandits, which were MiG-21s, that had been launched out of Yenbai, and they're heading for North. So North turns around, heads to the northwest. These two 21s are trying to chase him down, but they weren't going to catch North because he was going to speed as stink. They fired a couple of atolls at him, but they weren't even close to hitting him. So once they fired a couple, they turned back and headed back to Yenbai. Well, when the Red Crown says they're turning back, North turns around and starts heading to these guys. And then he came up on guard, which is 243.0. It's a UHF frequency that everybody monitors. It's a guard frequency. And he starts using probably profane language I had never heard of, and I've heard of all. And he's just cursing these guys out left over guard. Now, this is not a there I was at 20 grand. This is a true story. So the next thing we know, we hear Red Crown saying the Blue Bandits have just blown their tanks. They're turning back and they're attacking. Oh, boy. So we take our flight and we pitch on down because the Phantom, we can really get that thing going, and speed is life. They wind up at our left 7 o'clock at about 3 miles, and we're starting to pull back hard into them when all of a sudden here comes old Norton Nelson, and he winds up about a mile behind them. Well, these Blue Bandits, they didn't want to wind up in a chute, so what they did is they turned to the east to head back towards Hanoi to the Sam Rings. Well, I may be dumb, but I'm not stupid, and you don't chase those guys back into the Sam Rings. So after they headed back into the Sam Rings, we turned back towards Udorn, and that whole thing took about a minute. And it was probably, it was the most exciting mission I have ever had in my life fighter. It was just incredible, unbelievable. With a term we used, we called it auto fang. Auto fang is when the fangs come out and you really want to attack this guy. I was so pumped, I wanted to kill that guy in the worst way. But my adrenaline gland had been crushed because I was so high. It took me, I don't know, about 3 or 4 hours to come down from that high because it was just so exciting.
That's amazing.
That's my MiG story.
That's amazing. So, in all honesty, could the MiG even compare to the Phantom? Could they catch you? Could they climb with you? Anything like that, or was it they just kind of?
The Phantom had those big J79s back there, producing about 17,900 pounds of thrust each, and like I said, speed's life, and you really needed to fly to fight the Phantom at a very high Mach number, and you could outzoom those guys no problem. With a 17, you never wanted to turn with a 17 because he would turn inside of you. But the way you fought a 17 was you'd roll hard into a turn, and he would slowly bullet because he couldn't roll very well. Slowly pull his nose on you. As soon as he got his nose on you, you'd reverse back and extend. And as he came back, you did the same thing. And after a while, he couldn't touch you. So speed was life. But in the hands of a good pilot, that F4 could beat anything on the planet. I was there, by the way, when Steve Ritchie got his fifth MiG. We were at Udorn. He got the 2 one day, I believe. And he was a good pilot.
I can't even imagine. That sounds. I gotta be honest. Like, I'm jealous. I would love to have done something like that.
Brian, I tell you what, I can't tell you how lucky I have been in my life. First of all, got to go through college, then you got to go through a physical, then you got to go through pilot school, then you got to graduate pretty much in the top of your class to get the fighters, and then you got to go into the fighter business, and it's pretty competitive. And I did that for 26 years, and I can tell you how blessed I am. I know that.
And so you said you flew F-16s, right?
I did. I flew the Viper too. It's a single seat, single engine airplane. I always wanted to do that,
How many
but
hours
it's
you get in
this.
those guys?
I have over 900 in the 16,
Okay, that's cool. That's
and
cool.
I flew against. We had a couple of when I was at Nellis, which is a great place. It's called the home of the fighter pilot.
Hmm.
We flew against a couple of dissimilar airplanes that really were very interesting missions to tell you the truth. But if the truth be told, my first love was the Phantom.
Hmm.
I thought it was the greatest airplane of its time, and it had its shortcomings. But as they said in Cool Hand Luke, a man's got to know his limitations.
Hmm. Hmm.
So if you knew how to fly the airplane, you could do some pretty good work with it. It was my first love. Don't tell my wife.
That's awesome. So I'm guessing the viewers are probably going to be curious. So you're wearing the Purple Heart hat, and I'm guessing that jacket you're wearing has something to do with the Purple Heart as well. I can't really read it that well,
Yep, it sure
but
does. I'm very proud of it.
tell us about your recent experience. Now I know we're going to talk about your how you actually got the Purple Heart later on in the video, but tell me about your induction the other day.
Oh, we I'm a member of the National Purple Heart Hall of Honor, and that's in Valesgate, New York, which is just down the road from where I live up in upstate New York.
Hmm.
And it's a select fraternity that you're happy to be a part of, but you sure
Hmm.
don't want to join.
Yeah.
And they do a very nice thing about making you feel special about winning the Purple Heart. We go out and visit a lot of the World War II veterans who are just about to check out, and we give them a nice little plaque and salute and make them feel special because these guys are the only reason that you and I are not speaking German or
Hmm.
Japanese is because of these World War II vets.
Hmm. Hmm. I'm going to go ahead and show our viewers an excerpt from your interview with the Veterans History Project. Your story of how you earned the Purple Heart is truly amazing. I know it's one I'll never forget. Colonel Parlator, I'd like to thank you for joining me today. It was truly an honor. I'd also like to thank you for your service.
Brian, it's a pleasure for having me. Thank you so much.
So this following footage is from the Veterans History Project and Library of Congress. It's an interview with Colonel Parlator from about a month ago, and I'd like to thank the Library of Congress and Veterans History Project for helping me out and allowing me to use this footage. I hope you enjoy it. This is probably one of the most amazing stories I have ever heard. Enjoy, guys.
And Boxer 1 and 2 had taken off earlier that morning to go to this place. And they had come back with a bullet in the canopy. The guy, we knew that there was a really good gunner down there because he had put one through the canopy of one of these jets, and the guy came back and he had a big old hole in his kick. And when we got scrambled, we got orders, and as a backseat, I'm strapping them, writing down the information, where to go, who the frequencies, and all this stuff. So I'm scribbling all this stuff down. These coordinates of where this guy was, because they were still trying to take this guy out. What the target was there's a special forces camp called Kenyan Special Forces Camp, which was northwest of Tay Ninh. Tay Ninh was in 3 Corps near Saigon. It's north of Saigon, right near the Cambodian border, right on the border. The reason you have these special forces camps is to preclude the guys from coming around from Cambodia into South Vietnam. So there's this special forces camp that was under siege, and the bad guys they wanted to take this camp over because it was really hurting them. They couldn't get their supplies in, and they had mounted a couple of guns in. A couple of caribous C7s came in and got the living snot shot out of them. We had sent some guy in because there was this one gun that was really a particular problem. The FAC never knew where the heck he was. So we get scrambled mid-afternoon. It takes us about, I don't know, maybe 30 minutes to get down there. We're orbiting. We're getting instructions from the FAC. And I'm telling my front seater, I'm saying, hey, this guy's a 9-level gunner. We really need to watch it. So we had high drags and a gun. Our number 2 had nape and a gun. napalm. And I suggested to the front seater that the number 2 go in first, drop the nape, because when you drop nape, you get a nice fire, smoke, and now you have a general idea where the gun is, but when you put the smoke up, then you can hide behind it, and you're using that smoke to help you knock him out. But the fact he wanted to blow the trees away so we could see where this gun was. And I said, this is dumb. So we roll in, and we go down the slide, and Tom cuts one loose, pulls off, and boom, the airplane gets hit. Holy God. The first thing in your head is, what's that? And you know what the answer is. The airplane goes, pitches up, does a violent snap. I remember getting tossed forward in the seat and looking down on the floor because I could, the sun was going, I could see the sun shadow. So the airplane's doing one of these corkscrews. And we were at Cameron Base, so there was a lot of sand. So there was some negative G's because I remember getting hit with a face full of sand. So the airplane's pretty violent. So Tom's screaming, eject, eject, eject. So I reach down for the handles, and before I can get them, boom, the canopy goes out. Now you have to understand an F4. It's a sequenced ejection. There are a number of ways to get out of it. If the front seater pulls the handle, the back seater goes first, and then the front seater. Why? Because you've got rockets on the bottom of the seat, and if he goes first, he'll go over the top of you and burn you. And there's also a chance of collision. So the back seater always went first, followed by the front seater. If the back seater pulled his hands, then the back seater would go first, unless he turned, there's a handle, a select handle. You could turn the select handle, and if the back seater pulled the handle, he would go, then the front seater would go. And you'd have a briefing between the front seater and back seater where that handle was. And Tom didn't want it for me to blow him out, so he wanted me in the non-eject position. So we got hit, the airplane starts doing this. He pulls the handle, because he beat me to the handle, because I went up like this, because of the negatives. As I reached down, I'm left-handed. So I got to the handle, put my hand on it. Just as I got boom, out I go. We're doing about 500 knots. We're about 400 feet off the ground. If you go into the charts, by the way, and figure out all that stuff, it says the chute wouldn't open up. So boom, out. And at that point, you're not looking at the charts. You're just saying, I got to get the hell out of this thing. So out we go. The slipstream takes my arm, wraps it around the chair, breaks my arm, dislocates it. Helmet blows off my helmet because it's a pretty breezy. 500 knots, it's not a gas. 500 knots of wind is solid. Trust me. I had this beautiful Glycine Airman Special watch with my name engraved on it. Boom. That blew off my wrist. I guess some guy in Saigon or Ho Chi Minh City is wearing it right now as a war memento. And gloves blow off. I come crashing through the trees, and coming through the trees just slices the snot out of my face. I got a cut here, and I got a cut back here. It's all from going through the trees. I wound up, boom, I'm hit this thing in there. Go, holy mackerel, what the hell's going on here? And finally realized that I'm beat up pretty good. And as the dear Lord would have it, he didn't want me to die that day. I mean, I should have died a number of times, but I'm still here. I wind up in this crater, and it's a huge crater. It's like made by about a 2,000-pound bomb. It's huge. I mean, absolutely huge, size of a football field. And I'm sitting in this tree right at the edge of this crater. And finally, I come to it, and I realize where the hell I am. And there's some VC or NVA or whatever the hell it was. He's on the other side of the crater. He's shooting at me with his AK, and what the hell is that? And the sound of a muzzle of an AK when you point it at you has a distinctive sound. Trust me. So he shoots away a branch, and a little leaf. I remember this little stupid things. You remember? A little leaf goes into one of these things. Holy! So I get my radio, my ARC 10 out. And hey guys, come and get me. I'm in deep serious kimchi here. So. This Huey comes in. I don't know how long I was there, but I don't know if this guy was really trying to kill me or just he was trying to scare me. He didn't have to do that because I was already there. I was scared. Primordial instincts about survival. All I wanted to do was live for the next second. That's all I wanted to do. Anything I could do to live for that next second. And I'm calling on the radio. They're talking to me. And all of a sudden this Huey shows up, this gunship. So he comes in, comes down, lands in the crater. And he's blowing this stuff around. So the two of the gunners jump out, rush to me, and said, "Oh, don't worry, sir, we're going to get you out of here." I go, "Good idea." But I'm up so high in a tree that they can't get to my risers. So this guy obviously didn't pass physics. because he takes his belt and wraps it around my leg and ties me to the tree. And then he goes up and he figures that'll hold me. He cuts my risers, and what happens? Well, it's a fulcrum. You go whack, breaks my leg. You can see my leg is kind of bent. Dislocates it. And I had gotten beat up. My leg was not in good shape coming to the trees. So I'm hanging upside down with my leg hanging from this thing about 8 feet off the ground. And I guess I'm using some very flowery language to tell these guys it really hurts. Get that thing off me. So the guy says, okay. So he cuts the damn thing, and I fall 8 feet down, land on the back of my head. So I'm thinking, who's worse, the Army or the VC? So they grabbed me, and they dragged me across the bottom of this crater. Now, you got to understand, there's a lot of stuff going on. There's airplanes floating around, people are shooting. It's not a pleasant sight. So I don't care. Just get me the hell out of this thing. So they drag me to the chopper. They lay me down next to the skid. They're about to put me into the chopper when, boom, they lay a burst on the chopper, and he gets hit. He falls off into the crater. If the helicopter had come the other way, if it had gone off to the left, I wouldn't be here today. But it went off to the right, into the hole. That stops. Then there's a firefight. I find out later from Ian Dawson, who's the warrant officer in this helicopter. He comes out and he's ready for bear. He's got his M16 and he's ready to kill something, and he's scared too. So he comes up comes out of the crater hole, and comes up and drags the muzzle of his M16 across my face. Well, I grab the muzzle and I pull it aside. You know what? That bothered Ian for 30 years. I never knew that he had done that. I must have done it reflexively, because this day I still don't remember doing it. But he said, Carl, when I finally got a hold of him, he said, that thing has been bothering me that I actually was so stupid to put a gun across your face. I said, Ian, I don't remember it. Don't worry about it. So it was cathartic for him that he and I talked about it and get rid of it. So, so I took that. Then a little bit of lead was still flying. Stuff was flying around. So this Loach comes in, this OH-58 little light observation helicopter, comes in, lands in the crater. Ian, because Ian's a real small guy, and the back, you got two seats, you got the transit where the engine and the compartment is, you got this little space in the back. They drag me, they throw me in the back of that thing, because I'm the guy that's hurt the worst. And Ian, because he's a little guy, but he's going to hold on to me. We take off, and to this day I can still, my face was on the side of the floor. See, the things you remember. On the floor of the helicopter, and I'm watching the trees go by. And then the lights go out. Let me make sure you understand. I'll come back to my conscious part later, but at that point I go out. I'm out. When I get to Tainin, the 45th Surgical, there's only one orthopedic doctor in all of 3 Corps that day, and he's on leave. But it's like a sailor on day of leave. What's he going to do? He's going to go out and row a boat. So he didn't know what to do, so he came to work. And I just happened to show up, and my leg was pretty bad. My arm was all busted up. And because the thing had been dislocated so badly that it had pinched off the major artery that runs through the joint, my knee. So he feels no pulse in my foot. They put the finger down on your arch. No pulse. He says, hey, look. And I am a lieutenant. 3 hours earlier, I was in the picture of health. Now the guy says, hey, look, if I don't get a pulse, I'm going to have to take your leg. Holy mackerel. He says, I don't have time for anesthesia. So he grabs my leg and goes, whacko, and puts it back into joint and immediately gets a pulse. He says, okay, now I'm going to put you out so I could set your shoulder and do some other things, suture up things like that.